Well, hello, Mark. Good afternoon to you.
Well, good afternoon. It makes a pleasant change to speak to you in the afternoon rather than the evening.
Just a bit of a change, isn't it?
Right, Daniel. So, what are we going to, after discussing your life in the countryside, discussing the driving habits of the people here, roundabouts included, and the weather, what do you think we should have a little debate about today?
Well, why not talk about whether foreigners are still welcome in Spain or not after everything that's been going on?
Well, that is an interesting topic. I mean, a question, I suppose, how you phrase that. I think foreigners are always been welcome here because the country depends very heavily on tourism. But there is definitely a anti-foreigner feeling here at the moment, I would say.
It's down to, I would say, more about the housing situation than them overcrowding bars and restaurants or taking away jobs and stuff like that. I think it's more the housing situation which is causing the problem.
Well, I say a story straight off the bat. I have a friend here whose daughter has just come back from studying in Manchester University, but she was born here and raised here. And I said to her, I made a comment to her about there's a bit of an anti-foreigner feeling here at the moment. She's like, oh, you're imagining you're just getting old and bitter. And she stood on the train station here and she phoned me. She goes, I understand what you mean now because I'm here on the platform and it must be market day in Arroyo or somewhere like that because the train station is packed and it's all foreigners. And there's a Spanish woman at the end on her telephone, loudly in Spanish, complaining about all the foreigners and not using a particularly nice language. Of course, my friend's daughter understood the language because she's brought up here, but she suddenly realised, my goodness, maybe there is something in that.
You'll see it more and more, and especially in the older generation, in certain towns and places and cities, that they feel that they're being pushed out because of the amount of investment, the amount of foreign investment, and the amount of tourism that comes in as well. And you can understand it. And then you can understand it on the younger generation that can't find decent properties, that can't rent, can't get on the property ladder because it's yeah, there's a lot of unrest in many areas, not just the holiday side of things, but also the investment side.
Well, I mean, we're both based in Andalus here on the Costa del Sol, you inland, me on the coast. So we are basing it on here, and the Costa del Sol is probably one of the busiest tourist regions of Europe, if not the busiest. Maybe the Canary Islands once again tops it. But you do notice where I live, I would say close to maybe 1 in 3 now are foreign here, be it residents or people who have second homes here. And if you just take the gym I go to as an example, I'd say over the last year and a half, there seems to be like a Scandinavian invasion. So much so that just the other day I was talking with my friend, a Spanish friend of mine, and I reckon that half the people in the gym were Scandis.
Yeah, well, their disposable income is much greater than other countries. For example, the UK, we can say that easily. Their way of life is very different. They can work for 8 months of the year and then turn around and spend 4 months and go outside of their own country and live like absolute kings because they have that money. It's a different way of life, and you've seen as well that most of the investments coming in for property sales over the last, say, 18 months, maybe coming up to 2 years, has been mostly from Scandinavian countries, precisely for that reason. Even the rental market, you try and find a rental now, you're up against Scandinavians that will come over and pay a year up front. When someone that's living here can't turn around and say, well, I can't pay 6 months up front or even 3 months up front sometimes. So how can I? You can't compete with it. That's why the demand has gone so high and the price of rentals has gone so high as well.
I think on the sad thing with the rental market, there's a lot of negative news here in Spain about the squatters, or the coopers as they call them here. So landlords, be it foreign landlords or even Spanish landlords, or they all worry about renting long term and being stuck with someone and they can't get out and is not paying their rent. So if you've got a Scandinavian or a Northern European coming in, they're working, say, on a nomad visa, and they say, I'll give you 6 months up front. Yeah. And you're going to say, bloody hell, why not? Yeah, I think I understand why they do that. But once again, it's very unfortunate and very hard on the local community here who seem to be struggling to find housing to live in. The youngsters, I think that I read somewhere the other day, the average age now for a person down in Andalusia to leave the family home has gone over 35. I don't know how true that is.
It wouldn't surprise it wouldn't surprise me because it's been made so hard for everyone. But going back to just quickly about something about the squatter situation, I know that we see on the headlines on the news a lot about people that have gone away and come back and someone's living in their house and that. Okay, that's a different side of the squatter situation, but you've also got sitting tenants
Yeah.
who, yes, had the money to put up those 6 months and they've paid that, and then afterwards they turned around and said, well, I haven't got any money, I'm not leaving. There's a bit of a situation there that doesn't get said in the news. How many of those people are actually declaring the rent? How many people have actually deposited the deposit that you're supposed to give into the junta, to the government, so that it's guaranteed there? How many people are taking out insurance for things like this? How many people are actually there are so many things that aren't being done that when it comes to a legality of getting people out of your house, because you haven't done things a certain way in the first place, you're left with fewer options to get people out of your house.
The squatters thing is very interesting, and when people have families with them, that changes it as well. I think people can't, you just can't go on holiday and someone move into your house. I mean, they would get kicked out by the police, but it's a case of when it's a second house a lot of the time.
Well, they've got their rights. I mean, they have their rules, and even though they've broken in, there's no proof within. Yeah, okay. There's supposedly no proof. Oh, you didn't break. No, they left the window open. Oh, they left the door open because they've eventually got in. They've changed the lock, so they've done something. So they've actually managed to do it, and there's no proof otherwise. It's a situation which I believe that the governments have the power to be able to resolve. They need to re-qualify land in different areas so that people can build on them, that can be constructors that can give affordable housing. Doesn't have to be our high end, it can just be affordable housing for people that are suffering and need to get onto the property market in somehow. The social housing, it's very, very limited. It used to be quite a lot especially in Fuengirola. Going to Fuengirola, for example, what about communities? What about the
Yeah.
pockets of communities that come over spending a decent amount of money, but also create their own little environment, little communities? For example, in Fuengirola, I believe there was the Finnish one is no longer as big, but it used to be huge.
Well, when I got here, I think it was something like between 12 and 15,000 Finns living here, and they had an area called Los Pacos, which even had the avenue leading into it was called Avenida de Finlandia. But as people have got older and people have moved back home, I think that community has shrunk somewhat, and there is
Okay.
more Spanish in that area. But at a time, you'd go there, and it'd be only Finnish bars. There's still a Finnish school there, but they don't endear themselves to the local community, the actual local people. And you do get pockets all along the coast. The same thing. We were talking only the week was about Torrocks on the other side of Malaga, where you've got these communities of Germans and Dutch. I mean, I know some of the I think Mallorca is like one of the towns there is got a huge German population. It's like walking around in a German summer resort, just as like the Brits used to be back here in the early noughties and 90s.
There are even German supermarkets in Mallorca as well. So yeah, no, you're 100% right. There's a girl that I follow on social media, and she's recently moved over there. She's an English girl, and she's actually learned German because there are so many Germans over there and so many German business over there. She's actually learning German as well as Spanish to be able to mix in with the crowd there and integrate herself within the community.
That makes sense. I mean, I think it's very unfair to say that our foreigners. Not that you did say it, that our foreigners still welcome here. So it's an interesting question to pose, but there's definitely a feeling, especially again with the constant news, like it is all over the world. To be fair, with the housing issues we've touched upon, also with the question of immigration. I mean, there's every day here on the Spanish news there's boats landing, and it's how they classify the immigration. I mean, Spain is in need of workers because they have shortages in certain sectors. How that's possible with so many people unemployed, I will never know. But that's a debate for another subject altogether. But what they did for many years was their main source of immigration was Central and South America, where they have obviously a language connection and a historical connection. Whereas now that mostly kind of immigration you see on the news tends to be the Africans.
Yep.
Which and raises once again a tone of racism, which I believe we're gonna cover as a topic here in the next couple of weeks. But it does seem with the rise once again of Vox, which is the far right party here, there seems to be that kind of negativity towards the foreigner. Not that everybody's tarnished with the same brush.
No, and you'll see that's not again. That's nothing new because we've seen that in the UK as well. What do they try and do to win elections back in the day? Oh, let's talk about the borders. Let's talk about immigration, and let's fight for our country and this and that. I think one of the main issues is the integration, and for me, this is a huge point because how many times do you see people come over here and they spend no time at all trying to learn the language, no time at all. It's. I'm walking into a bar and they're shouting at you. I used to work in a supermarket and I'm bilingual. Have been for a long time. And I used to work in the supermarket. I was behind the meat counter, and you get people going, de uno,
Oh, God.
and they're shouting and adding an extra O at the end of the word. It doesn't work that way, guys and gals. Take a little bit of time out. Those days of getting a little phrase book before you go on holiday. Take some time, learn some words, and you'll integrate a lot more. And you won't be seen to be as ignorant because a lot of people do. They are seen as ignorant, and that's why a lot of the residents and the locals feel that much. Hang on a second. You come over here expecting me to speak English. No, you speak Spanish, and it's getting more and more now. Even the younger ones are really kind of like, really, come on.
Yeah, that we got. I mean, I could give you hundreds of examples of that, and you talk to people who've lived here for over 50 years, and all they can order is a café con leche. That's it. That's their Spanish. Hola, adios, café con leche. That's all they can say. And you say, no, but I don't need it. I don't need to speak the language. They all speak English, which isn't true. And it's also insulting to the culture here and the local people. You're a guest in their home in many ways. I was reading the thing about a village which is north of Benidorm, and it's a huge Norwegian population there. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but someone said they'd gone in there and they went to a restaurant and with their Spanish wife, and the menu was in every single language apart from Spanish, which I would imagine is illegal. But that kind of thing only infuriates and makes the locals here go mad.
Oh, totally, and that's why those pockets of communities that get made, that they're segregating themselves away from the locals. There will always be that friction there. There will always be that. Well, why are you doing that when you're in my country? Why are you? And we would say about people that are of a certain age that it's harder for them to learn languages. It's harder for them the attention span and things like that. Unfortunately, I believe it's more the comfort zone, that people don't want to be seen to make mistakes. A lot of people are very apprehensive about making mistakes. They don't want to feel stupid because they're saying it wrong. When the Spanish are much more open to you trying and saying it wrong than to actually not try at all.
I agree with that. I mean, your Spanish you are bilingual, but whereas my Spanish is pretty decent. I've stood up in court and spoke Spanish, and I've organised a mortgage and hired and fired people in Spanish. I still struggle to a certain degree because of my accent. I can't get rid of my English accent, and there's always going to be a certain amount of people who refuse to, because you're not speaking perfect Spanish, will kind of shut you down. You're always going to get that, but you get that in the UK. You used to get the jokes in the UK in the 70s about the Indian guy walking into a pub and trying to ordering a beer, and because he wasn't speaking in like an English accent, they would go, "Sorry, mate, I don't understand you," which is no different to what you get here. That's an ignorance of certain type of person. Yeah. But I from speaking Spanish and pretty decent Spanish, I overhear things a lot of the time. Yeah, be it in the changing room of the gymnasium or in the supermarket. Yeah, and they often make something, then they see me and they know who I am. Oh, I don't mean you because you're like us, and you're like, well, I am and I'm not, mate. Yeah, So there is definitely friction here. Definitely friction here.
I've had some classics because obviously, look at me. I mean, I don't look Spanish, and I've been in lots of different places and just played the foreigner, and heard what's coming out, and then all of a sudden I'll just go like that in Spanish back with an accent in perfect Spanish, and the faces go white.
Of the world, you'll get a certain type of racial profiling. I mean, we're both way over 6 foot. I'm blonde. I'm very white. So if people don't know me, they think I'm a tourist. Obviously, it's not that I'm wearing shorts at this time of year, but I do look like a tourist. But I do my best here to try and mix in with local community.
Did you point out the blonde because I'm grey or something?
Well,
What's going
I
on?
always I thought the grey was kind of like a fashion statement rather than a natural process. But I always I know you do the same thing. It's very important to me to be a good example here, and I try and if someone speaks to me in English that they're Spanish, I say, look, we are in Spain. Let's speak Spanish. If I don't understand you, we can speak in English. Yeah, but I try and do that, and I think it's important. I wish people would do the same thing.
I have a bad habit, I must admit, because when I'm in the supermarket, it's in a tourist town where I work, a little village, and the amount of Brits mainly that come in, and they're paying at the till, and they go, "How much?" And then the cashier goes, "Card or cash?" Because they've learned the couple of words, but they don't really need to. And then they grab their shopping and they go, "Thanks."
I
They
know.
can't even say gracias or gracias or gracias, whichever way around it is. Try something at least. Stop being so it's just laziness. It really is laziness.
It's the lack of the same. Thank you. That drives me nuts. I have to admit that. That's a pretty poor one here. But also people. I had this great one because as I've mentioned in the previous episode, I did own a bar here, and my bar was 95 predominantly Spanish clientele. So we would have the Spanish football on. But one day I remember it was something like Real Madrid against Atletico. So a big Madrid derby. The bar was packed. We must have 120 or 130 people in. And this guy walks in and he come up to the bar and he said to the girl behind the bar, "Excuse me, are you showing the Portsmouth game?" Right? She's like, "Eh? Mark, Mark." I was like, I said, "What, mate?" And he goes, "Are you
Have you
showing the
looked?
Portsmouth game, mate?" And I go, what do you reckon, mate?" "Oh, so you're not showing it then?" So, I mean, you get things like that all the time. And I think that's down to people. But unfortunately, those kind of people give us a bad name. Yeah. You would think the tourism on the Costa del Sol probably isn't the greatest example of many countries who come down here. People are basically looking for cheap beer and sun. But and you would think
And
maybe if you went to Granada or something like that, the type of tourist would be slightly better. Maybe they represent their own countries a little bit better than here. But it is an interesting debate. The kind of the way the foreigner is perceived at the moment.
it is, and to go back to one of the main issues is the investment on the property, and as we know from relatively recent news, uh, the proposals in Spain with regards to this tax. Right now, it's a proposal.
I think once again that depends on areas. I think that obviously
Yeah,
clearly the 100% tax on non-EU bars is not going to happen. That can't happen mainly because the different regions of Spain control their own taxes on transfers and purchases and things like that, and it would never get through Parliament.
well, I think that one for today is going to be sufficient. We've got more to talk about with regards to integration, with regards to racism, with regard to a lot more things on a similar subject. But for today, I think that one's a good one. Guess what, though, Mark? It's your turn to do the other bit today.
Oh, marvelous! Because I love doing this. I swore, like I said, I'd never go to Gibraltar, which I broke. So I guess I can break this as well. Right. So if you have anything to add to our conversation, or you have a question or answers, please leave a comment in the section below, wherever that may be. But don't forget to subscribe and give us a like. And if you have any suggestions of what you want us to talk about, please put them in the comment section. These are our opinions, and you may disagree with us. But between the two of us, we've got 60 years experience of living here, and I think we know what's going on.
We have a very good insight to it. It's not going to be what everything other people think or see, and it's not going to be perfect or 100% correct. It's our opinion, our perspective from our lives and what we've been through. So that's really important that people understand that as well.
It's very true. Right, on that note, Daniel, I'll bid you, as the afternoon turns into the evening, you have yourself a lovely evening.
And you, Mark. Speak to you soon.